Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a servant guide for Mr. Hijikata. This guy's a 5-star berserker with a hybrid buster quick deck. He hits hard and lives dangerously, but let's take a look why. Skill 1 is Demon of the Battlefield. It's a party-wide buster and star gen buff. It has a modest effect but high uptime. I find the combination a bit odd, but it smooths out some of the awkwardness involved in running him with manual star gen characters. It also gives him good Raiko synergy as she benefits from both halves of the buff. Her NP generates a shitload of stars, which Hijikata can then use for his own massive burst turn. Skill 2 is Disengage. It's a debuff cleanse with a small heal. Honestly, the cleanse looks to be the more useful part. Heals on Zergs aren't great to begin with, and with Hijikata in particular, it's a bit of a nuisance when you have to balance it with his HP mechanics. Frankly, a defense buff would have been a much better fit. Skill 3 is Laws of the Shinsengumi. It's a massive star absorption buff that also increases his crit damage based on how low his health is. To help you along with that, it also hits him for 1000 health. This is the core of his high-risk, high-reward strategy. At low health values, and especially with a crit support, he can rip enemies apart. It's good shit provided you can make the stars align with literal stars, low health, and a good hand. Hijikata's noble phantasm is Shinsengumi, Undying Integrity. This is a single target buster NP with enmity on overcharge. So let's talk about enmity. That's not an official game term, at least not one in FGO. Which brings me to ye old grind blue fantasy. In that game, there's a fairly accessible way to get passive damage that scales with your missing health. There's a bit more to it, but I'll spare you the minutia. That's called enmity. Granblue didn't invent the idea, but it lets me frame everything in terms that are intuitive, at least to me. So you'll have to live with it. Enmity in Granblue Fantasy was really fucking broken for a while. I believe it's still fairly strong, but don't quote me on that. What makes it strong is this. First, it's passive. Second, every character in your 4-person frontline is guaranteed at least one attack every turn, and each of them can hit up to 3 times. Thirdly, there's an infamous character that sets your entire frontline's health to 1, gives them lifesteal, and makes them invulnerable for a turn. Again, there's a bit more to it, but this ain't the place for me to talk about the finer points of conjunction. Here's the result in short. You can maximize enmity on demand, the resulting damage is fairly reliable, and despite all this, it's a fairly safe playstyle. Contrast this with FGO. Hijikata has 2 sources of enmity, but one's on a skill and therefore bound by a cooldown, and the second is tied to his buster NP, which isn't really spammable. That's bad for consistency. You get a maximum of 4 attacks on a turn, and that's only if you get a Brave Chain, and the extra card doesn't crit anyway. If you pull a bad hand, you're fucked. And let's not forget there's no enmity support in FGO. Pre-Lost Belt, we have like 3 characters that even have enmity? Yeah. In other words, the playstyle is inherently riskier in FGO. Poor consistency, slow ramp-up, the need for defensive options. The core gameplay is just a messier fit for the enmity concept. That's not gonna stop me from doing dumb shit, but keep your expectations modest. This guy's not a miracle worker. First of all, we have my very creative double waivers setup. Some people recommend Merlin for his health regen and crit synergy, but I think waiver meshes a lot better, especially with 2030s. On a turn-by-turn basis, his defense buff stops Hijikata from spontaneously exploding, which isn't exactly rare in Epic of Remnant. A critical benefit of defense over health regen is that defense increases your effective health without increasing your nominal health, because you take less damage from the same attack. This lets you operate at lower health values without losing survivability. Each waiver can also donate 50% meter for more frequent NPs. Now you may object to the optics of Hijikata leading an army of twinks into battle, but just pretend you're playing Token Rambu. Behind door number 2, I've got a setup with Danzo and Kotaro. If you put a K-Scope on Kotaro, he can dish out some damage, donate evade, and die from the first enemy NP. This will leave both Danzo and Hijikata alive and allow a more useful character to enter the field. I'll go over some backline options a bit later. The primary benefits of this team are a somewhat consistent source of stars, and a lot of hard survivability for Hijikata. Danzo has 2 separate outs. You can pop them so Hijikata can survive AoE, or you can use them once he's at extremely low health. And the star gen buff is a nice bonus. The only rough spot is getting Hijikata to low health. That's pretty much up to chance, though Hijikata and Danzo are respectable brawlers, so you should be able to take fights. Next up, there's a rider-heavy team with Drake and Quetzalcoatl. Drake provides AoE and a shitload of stars, while Quetz is a secondary attacker who can donate a buster/guts buff. That combo is great for Hijikata, and Quetz is a lot more reliable than Romulus, whose buff only lasts for a single turn. Stargen's gonna be inconsistent with this team, but Drake lets you burst up to large amounts with her NP. If you know how to card count, you can exploit this to set up explosive Hijikata turns. Team 4 pairs Hijikata with Irisfiel and Anne and Mary. Either version works, though the Archer Pirates are better if you're in the position of choosing. Irisfiel can keep your characters healthy enough not to die in one hit, and her Noble Phantasm gives guts to the whole team. With Prisma Cosmos, you can let her mostly sit around, especially after the first NP. As for asymmetrical docking, both versions have enmity on their NP. This means you can double down on the high-risk playstyle. Archer Pirates also has a Guts skill that lasts indefinitely, which is pretty nice. If Iris Field bites it early, you can pop that for insurance. It's a fun team, but fairly impractical. Your deck's gonna be a disaster with this combo, so brawling's gonna be a tall order. Option 5 is geared around single-target enemies. By pairing Hijikata with Hans, you have your damage and Stargent compacted into 2 characters. This frees up slot 3 for utility in the form of taunters. Now you have your natural taunters like George and Leonidas. These you can equip with things like Camlan, Golden Catches the Carp, Merciless One, or George's Bondcraft Essence. But you also have unnatural taunters that you draft with Guda Poster Girl. These are characters like Amadeus, ones with good skills but bad stats, poor dex synergy, or some other annoyance. You can customize a deep backline of cannon fodder according to your needs. Amadeus for stars, Mephisto for buff block, David for evasion, Geronimo for moral support, and so on and so forth. Now, none of this is worth it if you can't get damage onto Hijikata, and for this, you have 2 options. First, Black Grail. Self-flagellation and massive NP damage? Not bad. Secondly, there's Outrage. It has a 1-turn taunt and persistent NP gain. Hijikata is only exposed for 1 turn, and if he gets hit a few times, all the better. And just to clarify, if there's more than 1 taunt on the field, enemies do their regular target selection between eligible targets. Our last team is a combo with Maid Alter and Mr. Fister. The latter can gimp his own star absorption and give Hijikata more reliable access to stars. Maid Alter is interesting because she has a targeted cooldown reduction skill that comes with a Stargent buff. Both of Hijikata's buff skills have 3-turn durations with 5-turn cooldowns. With coaching, that becomes a 1-turn downtime. She also has a bunch of quick buffs that are mostly relevant to Mr. Fister, but Hijikata benefits to a lesser degree. If you're disappointed by the lack of a meme team, don't worry. We've got craft essences to pick up the slack. The obvious choice for Men of Culture is Necromancy. Every time you die, flip a coin. If you win, you can keep going. If you lose, reset and pop a skill. It's funny to do once or twice, but in practice, it's a really obnoxious way to play the game. If you're gonna spend that long in loading screens, you may as well play on JP. More practical options include Golden Sumo, of course. Victor from the Moon has a Buster Crit loadout, and it's one of the few CEs with more than 2k attack at max level. Berserkers like Hijikata really appreciate the extra stats. Holy Knight Supper gives starting charge, crit strength, and NP strength. Steel Training gives defense, which is good if you're a coward. Wolves of Mipu is a hybrid Buster Quick Craft Essence, and you get it for free. That's nice. 2 Gods, 3 Legs, 7 Vajanyas lets you maximize Hijikata's enmity with NP damage to boot. Suicide Lead variants can opt for Bodhisattva. His enmity is tied to Overcharge, so you can abuse that property. Of course, Bodhisattva only triggers once, so you'll want him to make a graceful exit once he's done. Oh, it looks like we have one last item on the list. Away? Yeah, sure. Tell me how that goes. Moving on to Mystic Codes, Hijikata has some interesting choices. The more conventional one is Atlas Academy. It provides invuln and its cooldown reduction lets you get 2 rotations of your buffs with 0 downtime. Your other choice is Anniversary Blonde. It gives a Buster buff, flat stars, and guts. He benefits greatly from every one of these skills, which makes him one of the few servants that would prefer Anniversary Blonde to Fragments of 2004. As far as I can tell, Hijikata is a fun but impractical servant. He's great for enmity memers and, well, that's about it. His kit gets better as your fights get messier, which under normal circumstances would recommend him for new players. But here's the catch. His brutal item requirements make that a non-starter. The chains alone are insurmountable for fresh accounts, but having Spinal Fluid on top of that is just salt in the wound. In practicality terms, I'd give him a skip. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, by all means like, sub, and watch me stream on Twitch. Chacha Guide coming later this week. I'll see you later.